At this moment, we are ready to move on to create a next layer, although, we have to go back to fix some of the shadows on this one. But for now, we have a layer with the color information, and we want to create a layer for the shadows. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to say new layer. I'm going to call it shadow. And the same manner, I'm going to create, right click to create a collection. So I'm going to call it shadow collection. And I am going to assign to this, let me go back to my master layer for a moment. I'm going to assign to this a few different things. So I'm going to start with, of course, the objects that require participation in shadows. So in that case, of course, is going to be my monster. All layers of my monster get added to it. I'm going to also add um, the ground plane because my monster is going to be casting shadow on that ground plane. And I'm going to add the sky dome and the directional light. Uh, Both are, of course, light sources that will be receiving and casting shadows. And if I go and test that render right now, let me just move this one to the side for a moment. I'm gonna go and render that frame. So let me just go and find my render layers here. Just click on my render layers view here, and I'm going to render this layer here. I'm going to continue working on this one because the other renderer is kind of failing. So I should be able to see pretty much the same as I'm seeing before. Just pause my capture so that for now it's just rendering. So you see it's coming up right now, and I see that my monster is illuminated there. It's casting some shadow on the ground, and you have some alpha going on there, some transparency, meaning allow me to just see through, but it's not the way I want it. So what I need to do here is we need to modify the way this layer works. So we're going to right click on it, and we're going to create a shader override. What does that mean? We're going to create a shader that is going to override all the shaders for the objects inside of this layer and this collection. So I'm going to create a shader override that creates this, and that allows me to click on this icon and go and look under the shader nodes under the R node component, and there is this one called shadow matte, and that shadow matte gets created right there. Let me graph it. There is my shadow matte. Right now it's connected to all these guys, and it's connected right there. And that means that if I go and test render now, here we go one more time, we're in the same layer still. So there it is. It just gave me a full black frame, but if I go and look at my transparency or my alpha, this is what actually my scene is rendering. Is rendering shadows of my creature on the ground, and of course on itself, creating a good effect that of course is going to generate, of course they're going to be black shadows because all of this producing is this black image here. So um, yes, that's working fine, but there are a couple of things there that I need to correct. Actually more than a couple, but let's start one by one. So one thing that I like to do is I want to soften the edge of my shadow. You see that the shadow on my character is too harsh, so that needs to be fixed by just going to lights here and clicking on my directional light, which is the one that's casting the shadow. I'm going to open up the attributes there, and remember we can fine tune the angle. I had already done a little bit of that. My light is actually very high exposure 3, but the angle I'm gonna crank it up. I'm gonna just say 3 also for the angle there, and I'm going to test one more time this little section here just to see how it does it. That way I get to make a softer shadow for my character casting on the ground, and I may have to move it around and test it until I do my compositing to match best. Just pause the video for a second. So that made it a little bit softer. I may have to go back and do a bit more later on. For now, I'm gonna keep it like that. And of course, my sampling is not quite there, but I'm not going to be working on that yet. Okay, so I got that. But the other thing that I wanted to look at is that he's got self-shadowing. And if you remember, in the color layer also we got self-shadowing. So it's not a good idea to have shadows in one and then the other one, so both are going to have self-shadow. So what we're going to do here is we are going to turn off the shadows in one of the layers and keep it on in the other one. I know my light, you see that shadows are turned on. Check cast shadows. This is my light, my sky directional light. So what I'm gonna go is I'm gonna go back to my color layer, go under the collection. There is my directional light right there. So I'm going to check off my light there. I'm gonna just right click. I'm gonna create an absolute override for the visible layer. That way, in that layer, that light does not cast shadows. I'm going to go now to my shadow layer. I'm going to look for my light there, directional light. In this case, I'm going to check it on. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to create absolute override for it. So now I know that the light is casting shadow in one and not in the other one. Let me just test. So this one is turned on, so I'm not going to test that one. Let me go to the other one right now. I'm gonna go to the layer color here. I'm gonna test render this one right now. So now you see that, let me just go to the color version of the layer. Now you see he does not have self-shadowing on himself. You can see that he's illuminated by the sky dome, illuminated by the direction light, but he's not casting shadows on himself. So that way we start separating two things. Okay, so now I need to do one extra thing, and that is that let me just minimize this thing for here. Let's move it to the side for a moment, and I'm gonna go back to my shadow layer. That canopy needs to be also there, casting shadow on my character, but the difference of elements, go to see the canopies, which is in the master layer, is not added yet. But the difference is that I cannot put that canopy in the same collection because that collection has a shader override that if it has a shader override, it's going to remove this shader that this object has. And I don't want that. I want it actually to stay using the shader that it has. So for that reason, I'm going to create another connection under the shadow layer. And let's call it canopy connection. And I'm going to add the canopy to that collection. So let me just go back and try render this out through my camera. Let me see if I can get full version of this. I forgot I need to actually change the visible layer to be shadow layer. So I'm going to use to put it to render now. So now I just finished rendering. I'm going to go and look at my alpha channel now. So we see now that in my scene I got the shadow, that is the canopy shadow, plus the self-shadowing of my character, all in the same layer. Of course, again, this is the alpha channel, this is the color layer, which is going to be, used in After Effects. All right, so we got a shadow layer. We may have to go back after we render it out and see if it really matches our background or pictures the best we can, but for now it seems to be doing what it needs to be doing. All right, that's the end of the shadow layer. We're gonna move on next to another layer.